Great. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you ladies.
Yeah, no, I love your story and I can't wait for you to share your journey with us and how you got to where you are and kind of your views because I love it and I think that it's very in line with what's going on in today's world and your company. I can't wait to learn more about you and share your story with our listeners. So let's jump right in.
Sure.
So I guess first of all, tell us a little bit about your should we start on the like how you got to where you are or just jump right into where you are and then go
Well,
back.
when we were chatting earlier, you were mentioning that you're a second generation business owner,
Yeah.
which I think is unique in itself, right?
Yeah.
And not a lot of children want to take over their parents' business, right? And it was just I loved your story from you started from the time you were 4. Of course, you zoomed in and out of different stories, but I
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant because you knew what you wanted to be when you were that
Yeah.
age.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, like our characters developed by the time what we're like 7 or 8 years old or something, and those core interests are there. I wanted to become a lawyer because I believed in advocacy, and I just couldn't understand how some people maybe had a different life experience or might have been treated differently just because they didn't know what their rights were. So that was kind of like that was my like childhood dream of like, oh, I want to help people and I want to become a lawyer because of for this reason. But so really, carrying on a legacy as a second generation business owner was not really what I had intended to do. But I think like a lot of people last year, like 2020 was a period of reflection, sitting in our homes on lockdown, um, allowed us to really kind of self-reflect and think about what was important in life and the limited time that we do have, like how are we spending it, how are we experiencing joy, how are we serving our community, and all of that made me realize like there's something to be said, something to be proud of, a family business, or to be able to build a legacy, or to try to build generational wealth. So I never imagined that I would be a president of a construction company. And even when I was, before going back to law school, when I was working for my dad right out of undergrad, I really I really was not sure if this is what I wanted to do, but it was more so I wanted it to be a choice for myself and not just something I did because, I was the boss's daughter and I didn't have any other options. So I definitely think, if you look back at your childhood, you think about like what you liked, like, oh, I like helping people, or I like taking care of people, and then you end up being a nurse or a doctor, or, I like arguing, or I like debating, or something like that. You might find out that you might want to be a lawyer, but and I was just fortunate enough that those skill sets that we learned in law school and stuff was transferable to business, and it just all just kind of came full circle and made sense for me. So
I
Right.
love that. I love how your passion of going to law school and being a lawyer kind of meshed with the your dad's company and it kind of was the perfect combination and you put the two together and now you're the president of a construction company but all those law skills go into making you who you are today and you wouldn't be where you are if you wouldn't have gone to law school and kind of all
right.
came together.
Yeah, it did. I mentioned it's full circle, but so when I first started working for my dad, like, so I come from a family where we always had to have a plan, right? It wasn't just enough to like, okay, I have a job, I'm working, like, what's the next step? What's your next goal? What's the next thing that you want to accomplish? So even though I was, I had a job, I think by that time I'd moved out of my parents' house, and I was trying to figure out, what the next step was for me. And I decided to go back to business school just because I thought it would be helpful whether I decided to stay and work for my dad's company or move on and do something else. And at that time, I think I was looking at a marketing, sort of PR, communications role. And this is, after I'd, gone through undergrad. I was a poli sci major. I was still on that legal, track. And then for some reason I got discouraged and sort of switched majors and then went down a different path. But in any event, when I went back to business school, I took business law, and it was like the first textbook I'd read from cover to cover. I loved, everything about that class. And that's what like solidified, okay, I'm going to go back to law school one day. If I don't, I'm going to regret it. But and even like in my day to day, I was doing marketing and drafting proposals, but I was getting really deep into like the terms and conditions of the contracts and all that stuff. And so that's when I realized like I still had this kind of innate, desire to develop that skill and to learn more about how that might, transfer to, running a business one day.
Right. You had mentioned when we were chatting earlier about, hey, if you don't feel confident, I've got a story for you. What was that story you were sharing?
Yeah. So, people hear now like, oh, she's got, multiple degrees and very accomplished professional and all that stuff. And it may seem like it came easy to me, like school came easy to me, but I was never like the smartest kid in the class. I struggled for that strong B plus. Um, and even getting into grad school, like I got some very borderline mediocre, just enough to get a pass and get somebody to accept me into their graduate program. But my first semester, I was taking prereqs and I failed finance, and I'd never failed a class before. Like grade school, undergrad, I'd never failed a class. I never knew like that sense of holy crap, what did I get myself into? Maybe I'm not good enough to do this. Maybe I don't really have it in me. This isn't for me. All of those, thoughts went through my head. And
Right.
it's kind of funny. For a while after I got my degree, I had this recurring dream that I did not get all my credits to graduate.
Oh,
It was
no.
like this nightmare that kept coming back, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't graduate. I didn't finish all my classes. But I think that was just that subconscious, like, that self-doubt, I guess, kind of wanting to creep back in every now and then. But I got through that program. I passed finance the next time I took it, but it taught me something. It taught me that I had to approach that program differently than I did any other field of study that I'd had taken on before. And learning that in my MBA program prepared me for law school. Like I went into law school thinking, okay, I'm going to have to learn contracts a little bit differently than I learned torts or something, or civil procedure. And so I was able to kind of get ahead of the learning curve by just understanding how I study and all that stuff. But um,
I love that. I wish I knew that earlier too,
yeah,
because you don't learn one subject the same way as you learn the other.
right,
And that's a huge, I think, tip there. And I love that you were so vulnerable and shared with us that you were like questioning, like, should I do this? Am I gonna be able to do this? Because I think everybody has those thoughts, whether they admit them or not.
right,
And I think it's nice to hear that others do have those thoughts, and you have to push through, but maybe in a different way, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and I think
for
that's the
sure.
difference. Sorry. That's
Good,
the that's the difference between someone who, fought through it. Maybe you didn't pass finance the first time, but then you did it again and didn't let that stop you. That's the difference between someone who, has overcome those obstacles and has become stronger because of it, and someone who just gave up. I
Right.
think so often it's easy for people to give up too easily.
Mhm.
it is. And I think, I'm the type of person, it may take me a while to make a decision to do something. Like I may think about it and really got to research it. But once I commit to doing it, I'm committed. So, whether I pass, fail, whatever, like I set out to do something, I put it out in the universe. I said I was going to do it, and now I'm committed to doing it. And I think that's what we have to do sometimes. I mean, nothing is easy. Nothing worth having is easy. It's all going to come at a challenge, but I think if you accept the challenges, you can grow. Again, you can learn something that can help you to advance, further on in your career, that maybe that would have slowed down your trajectory had you not been open to it. So yeah, so I'm all for just constant like growth and advancement, and self-reflection and introspection. And
Oh, I like that introspection.
Mhm.
I love that word. What you I'm hijacking the question. Sorry. I love the fact that you said like trust your gut deep down inside. When we were chatting earlier, you were sharing that, and that was, I think, one of the points that you wanted to share, or one of the stories that you wanted to share, because even at 4 years old, you knew what you wanted to do, but then you kind of got derailed, and you were like, well, why didn't I trust my gut? Like, why didn't I stick with that?
Right, right. Yeah, I think we're, in our younger years, we are a lot smarter and understand a lot more about ourselves than I think we realize we do. So, I just remember dressing up in my little blouse and carrying around my briefcase and playing court with my friends in, the fourth grade. And
Who does that when they're teeny? That's so cute. I
Yeah.
love that. I love it.
like Matlock and yeah. So I think that there was some sort of seed that had been planted at that time. But I think, as we kind of explore what we like and understand, what's a hobby, what can I do as a profession, that sort of evolves. But yeah, I do think you really have to trust your instinct, trust your gut. It's there, it's telling you something. It's your spirit inside that's telling you yes, no. It's that discernment. And I think it's definitely a guiding force in my life. And so I've learned to kind of trust that gut feeling and that instinct, when I'm trying to make decisions, and it very rarely, steers me wrong personally.
So I'm going to open this door. I don't know if you can hear it on your end, but now my puppy wants to come back into the
Oh,
studio.
It's like sounds like 100-pound dog right now, and she's like
oh my
banging.
gosh.
I have to say hello now. And I have to
Oh,
say
she's
hi.
so cute.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So my question is did your dad, being a business owner, want you to take over the business? Was he trying to steer you a certain way?
Yeah, I think I think most parents that kind of set out to start a business, dream of being able to pass it down to their son or daughter one day. And his father was, an entrepreneur and business owner and had a janitorial business. None of his kids wanted to get involved in it. They all kind of wanted to do their own thing. My dad grew up on the carpentry and woodworking trade. And so, he used to make fine, furniture and fine art, and realized it's really hard to support a family off of being a fine artist. And so evolved into carpentry and then developed the construction business. And so I think it was always in his sights, to have that business passed down to his kids. I remember, spending my summers in high school going in and answering the phones. It was the family business was a part of my life growing up. And I think I saw, the firsthand sacrifices my family made to try to get the business off the ground. And so when I first started working for him, initially I was planning on just working and answering phones and helping out with marketing materials, and then finding, submitting resumes and finding something else and moving on. But I pretty quickly realized that there were so many advantages and um, so much good that came out of the family business that I kind of owed it to myself. I owed it to my family, and I owed it to my parents to at least try it, like give it a legitimate shot and say, okay, I'm really going to invest myself. I'm really going to learn the business, and I'm really going to give it a fair shot and see if this is something I can make a career out of, and something that I can be passionate about. And so that's what I did. But I think, he had a huge hand in it because he exposed me to it. He taught me, all the perks and benefits of what it's like, to be able to have your own business, some of the tax advantages and, expenses that you can write off that you can't do if you're working a 9 to 5 for somebody else. I mean, it has its pros and its cons. You're also usually the first one in, the last one out, and working weekends, and it, keeps you up at 2 a.m. Because you want the best for, your business and your team. And and ideas floating in the middle of the night and all of those good things. So yeah, so I definitely think that he tried to steer me into the direction of taking over the family business. And I think I tried to also, you know, take a step back and make sure that it was something that I really wanted to do for myself. And then once I realized that it was an easy decision to come back.
That's great. Your dad sounds like a great guy, and I'm sure he's very proud of you.
Yeah.
Being now like the president of a construction company as a woman, I feel like in a male dominated industry, how, like, what challenges have you had to overcome or do you overcome on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's a little bit easier now that I've started to like grow some gray hairs. But I will tell you, when I was, when I first started, I was fresh out of undergrad. I was 23 years old. I was working in construction, and it tends to be very like good old boy kind of network. My dad, I think, could get along a little bit easier because he's older, he's male, he can kind of relate in ways that I couldn't. So initially, it was a challenge. I had it a little bit easier because I was, doing more soft skills with marketing and business development. So there, the few women that were in the industry were in those roles.
Mhm.
But I think one thing I kind of like about being in a male dominated field, as one of few women, one of few minority women, is that you're often underestimated when you walk in the room. And it's awesome to see people's face
I
when they
bet.
realize you know what the heck you're talking about, and can run circles around them, right? Boss up.
Love it. Love it.
So yeah, so I've gotten used to it, and going from construction to the legal field. I mean, women are still very much underrepresented in the legal field, but I like it. I get along with the boys just as long as I get along with the girls.
Right.
So
I love that.
I would love to get your perspective now on hiring, right? Now that you've had your fair share of challenges getting into construction, being in a male dominated, world, and now you're really in charge of hiring too. So what kind of perspective do you kind of bring, right, to
yeah.
that area?
Yeah, I think so much about the right hire is really about the fit. It's about the fit within the organization. It's about understanding the culture. It's about understanding the vision, and does my personal vision for my life, what I want to accomplish, how I want to spend my spare time, align with the vision of the company. I love having a diverse staff in age, backgrounds, ethnicity. I just think the collaboration, the ideas, the experiences, the thought process, the way we can serve our clients is so much better when we have a diversity of thought and a diversity of ideas and experiences around the table. So, so that's always something that I'm looking for, in my team. Are we well represented? Um, and I think, just in terms of what I'm looking for when I'm hiring, I love confidence. I love confidence, not arrogance. I want people to be assured of themselves and their skills when they come in. We do a lot of fishbowl interviews, and we have people from different departments, and it can be kind of a little bit of an intimidating experience. But I love it when people come in confidently, can clearly communicate their skills, why they want to work for our organization. Like, yes, I know I have a position to fill, and I'm out there and I'm trying to sell you on our business, but I also want to know why you want to come here, because I don't think a lot of prospective employees see the flip side of the investment that employers make in recruiting and retention and training, and trying to make sure we get the right people in the right seats. And so, I just look for people that are candid, they're themselves, are open, they're honest about what their goals are, they're honest about why they want to come work for us. And really just looking for that synergy and just making sure that it's going to be a good fit for both of us going forward.
That's great. Has the past year, have you had to pidget? Have you Have you had to pivot at all, like your culture and how you retain and attract new candidates or employees to your business? How has that changed?
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm sort of, back new to the entrepreneurship side, back new to construction within, the last 6 months. In just even like in the generational shift from the way my dad recruited and hired into the way that I'm looking to recruit and hire is just it's completely different. And then we also have like a different appreciation and understanding for like the full benefits package. My dad is a boomer and he comes from the era of like you get paid a salary and you work hard and you're there on time and you put in a good day's work. And I think younger generations, millennials included, through whatever the next whatever that
Was it Gen
generation
Z? What is the next one? Is it
yeah,
Gen Z?
I think so.
I
I
think
think
so
so.
too.
So,
And so, we appreciate, I think, the flexibility. We appreciate the autonomy and being trusted to be able to do a job and do it well and not be micromanaged. And if, I like my dog, like is sick in the morning and I get there 8:30 instead of 8 o'clock, it's not a problem. And um so I think just the generational shift has made me rethink about how we recruit and retain, but definitely like just everything that's happened this last year, the market for good employees is tight. It's a very competitive market. I think people have found hobbies, they've started businesses, which I think is awesome. But there's still a need for really, really good labor. And so we're trying to think about how we present our company to that labor force and what do we want to be when we grow up, or what do we want to be going forward, and what type of people do we want to have around us, and what does our team look like, and how do we collaborate and work together. So we are looking at like what's the end goal, what do we want to look like, what type of organization do we want to look like, and then kind of backing into, okay, how do we recruit that talent.
Right. I think that's all important information for potential employees to hear, right? Because a lot of people, right, after going through last year and kind of, I think everyone's kind of soul searching now. They want to know, what's important to the company and where the company is going, and kind of what their beliefs are as a company and what they want to do. So I think that's all really important things to know, at least that the company is thinking about.
mm-hmm. No,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah.
What? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and it's one of the challenges that I'm finding is just how do we share that? How do we share that? How do we get people excited about where we're going? How do we communicate, challenging times to staff and still keep the stability and keep the confidence and the morale up in an organization where, especially in construction, like things are just very volatile right now. The market's
Right.
very volatile. Fortunately, things are busy. I think things are picking back up. Projects that were stalled last year are picking back up, and so I think folks that we're looking to recruit are finding some confidence that things are stabilizing after COVID, and opportunities are going to be there for the long run. But
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Just interested to ask your perspective on what you guys are doing as a company when you have a candidate that is like, oh, hey, sorry, I have COVID. I tested positive or whatever, whether they're just started and they're in their probation period or long-term employee. What are you guys doing? Did you finalize that piece, or is it still?
yeah, it's still kind of ebbing and flowing because circumstances continue to change. But last year I did help prepare a policy. So I was outside at that time, I was practicing law, but we did put a policy together that basically allowed employees to be paid for, I think it was up to 2 weeks, if they had a COVID related leave, COVID related illness, COVID. So if they tested positive and they had to quarantine for 2 weeks, they were able to get paid for those 2 weeks.
Nice.
Uh,
I
yeah.
I think I think candidates are probably going to start asking those questions. Like right now it's always salary, right? But then right behind salary, and maybe even more importantly, has been benefits
Right.
to those, those employees that are looking for jobs, right? And want to find a great company and a great career. And then I think what will probably end up happening is the COVID piece right after. Is it remote or not remote? That's always a question too. But I think COVID, a related sickness question, will be kind of right in line with the benefits piece. So it's great that you have that ironed out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It took us a while to think, how to put things together. And then there's, some at the time, I think there was some federal guidance that we sort of followed and some state guidance that we followed, and we were able to put a package together. And I think it made employees feel safe, that they weren't going to be forced back to work if they were sick or ill or and we really just kind of rallied. We were fortunate that we didn't have a lot of people out at any one time, but we did have some instances where people were infected, and they would quarantine for a couple of weeks, and they'd retest, and they'd get back into work in the rotation, and we were able to keep things moving. So
That's good. I was going to ask, what one piece of advice would you give someone who, has been working for a few years and wants to make a switch, aren't happy anymore mid-career? What advice would you give someone?
I would say, don't hesitate to explore the option and take the leap if you've done your research and it makes sense for you. In some circumstances, yes, you may have to take a salary reduction for a period of time in order to get back to, a mid-level career. I did the same thing. I waited 10 years after, I began my professional career to go back to law school. So I had zero income. I was taking out student loans. And, most of my peers, at least when they came out, were not, some of them were not making as much as they were, at other jobs coming in, but they had another skill set. They had an expanded, variety of opportunities now available to them because they had this additional, credential behind their names. And so I don't regret it at all. At the time, I think it was tough. I left all of my friends in Orlando, moved to Gainesville. Everybody's 10 years younger. There's no dating scene for me. Everything that I could think of why this wasn't the best thing for me at that time was thrown at me again. That sense of like, am I good enough to be here? Um, all of it crept in, but it's the best. Like I'm so glad that I did it now. I don't regret it for a moment. I had some great experiences while I was actively practicing, and now that I'm back in the business world, it for sure does something for that confidence. Like, that moment that I had that self-doubt, I'm like, wait a minute, but I'm a badass.
Yes.
So yeah, so I'd say if anybody's thinking about transitioning mid-career, definitely vet it out, do your research, get a mentor in the industry, look at what it would be like to transition kind of mid-career, and don't hesitate to take the leap. Life is short. And I think the days of, having one job for your entire life, they're just not here anymore. And so if reinventing yourself every 10 years or however many is what you need to stay, inspired about your work and enlightened and feel joy in your life, then I say do it.
Love it.
Absolutely. That's great
Hmm.
advice, Jessica. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else that we didn't cover, Ash, that you want to ask?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything that we chatted about. Jess, what about you?
I think that's it. I'm encouraged to be a second generation, business owner. And I encourage, other people to think about, how do I carry on a legacy? Does it make sense to start, from scratch, start all over again? Or can I take what's been built and expand upon it? And it doesn't have to be, the business maybe that your parents or your grandparents originally set out, but you can take that stepping stone and expand upon it. And so I just encourage everybody to think deep and look deep within themselves about what it is that you want out of life, and what you can do to get there, and just put one foot in front of the other.
I love that.
I know, me too.
That's perfect ending spot. I love that, Jessica. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great.
And until next time,
Live bold and boss up.